Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Ceraolo. Today, we will be doing a training on hazard communication. This will be a condensed version as we would normally do this training for about an hour, maybe a little longer, but we're just going to cover in less detail through this what we would like to cover. The first part I would like to go through is history, standards prior to 2012 and 2014, and how hazard communication came to be what it is today. I would like to cover the SDS and its parts briefly. I would like to cover the pictorials and what the symbols represent, and I would finally like to briefly cover the development of the GHS label and what it represents. So first of all, what is hazard communication? Hazard communication is an OSHA standard. There's also a program. The goal of the hazard communication program, as it says, is to protect people from injuries and illnesses that could be associated with exposure to hazardous substances or chemicals in the workplace. Hazard communication is a standard, as I said. That standard is a law. It is known as the right to know law. That right to know law is essentially what employers need to tell employees before they start work or on their job training so they can better identify hazards. So in 1983, HAZCOM was first adopted. When it was first adopted, it had a very limited scope. Over the coming years, in 1987, that scope was expanded so that it would cover other industries and employees in those industries who could potentially be exposed to hazardous substances. Then following that, we had the development of the GHS, Globally Harmonized System, or Global Harmonization System, as it is also referred to. The GHS was created in 1992 from an international UN mandate. The GHS is not a regulation or a standard. It is a system of classification, protective measures, etc., to help employees. 10 years after its creation, its first edition came out in 2002. It is updated every 2 years after that. And according to OSHA, the GHS is a system for standardizing and harmonizing the classification and labeling of chemicals. In 2012, OSHA ruled HAZCOM to conform with the GHS. In 2014, it was signed into law. By June 1st of 2015 was the deadline for manufacturers and distributors to comply with the signing and implementation of GHS into the US. And by June 1st of 2016, employers had to be fully compliant with the implementation of the GHS also. Sorry, my screen froze. I'd like to go to the next slide. Prior to 2014, OSHA referred to HAZCOM. When you would refer to the HAZCOM, it would tell you to go to CFR 29, 30, and 49. Again, it would tell what the employer needed to inform the employees of regarding hazard communication, known as the right to know law. In those sections, once the employers explained to the employees what was needed, they were referred to the NFPA. Something else they could have been referred to as the HMIS, either or. NFPA or the HMIS were essentially one and the same. But HMIS, stands for Hazardous Material Information System. Again, my screen froze, so I'm sorry. 1 second. Okay, benefits of the GHS. It would improve hazardous information in the workplace or hazard information in the workplace. Its goal was to enhance worker understanding of hazards, especially for low and limited literacy workers. It would enhance their understanding. Hopefully, also, it would promote safer handling and use of chemicals within the workplace and provide a quick and more efficient access to information on safety data sheets. Any questions so far? Sorry, I'm kind of flying through it. No? Okay. The NFPA is Their symbol is a diamond with 4 diamonds inside, 4 different colors: red, obviously representing flammability; blue, representing health hazards; yellow, representing reactivity; and white specifically states what the hazard is. Further information. The NFPA has their own numbering system. Each number, or each diamond, colored diamond, will have a number associated with it. These numbers go from 0 to 4, 0 being no hazard or very low hazard, 4 being high hazard, very or extreme hazard. You can think of it as like burn severity. Something that's not so bad would be a 1st degree burn. Something that's very bad would be a 3rd degree burn. They are numbered in ascending order. GHS also has their own numbering system. I will cover the pictorials briefly later. The GHS pictorials have numbers associated with them, like I said, but because the GHS is international, their countries, because they were adopted by other countries before they were in the US, they adopted due in confirmation, essentially, or coordination with their military standard, or DEFCOM, death communication. That numbering system goes in descending order. So they are numbered 1 to 5, 5 being low or no hazard, 1 being extreme or high hazard. It's opposite in the NFPA. And here is a chart that states what I just said. HMIS and NFPA go from 0 to 4, 0 being minimal, 4 being severe. GHS is the opposite, 5 being minimal, 1 being severe. Any questions there? No? Okay. With the adoption of the GHS system, we had standardization of SDS. Prior to that, they were called MSDSs, which stood for Material Safety Data Sheets. Now it's just safety data sheets. They argued for the M to be dropped because it was not only material, there were chemicals and substances also, so they just dropped the M. And it standardized all 16 sections of the document. SDSs are written in English first, the native language of the country second, and all sections are prioritized. The first section would be identification, coming with the product identifier, manufacturer information with a phone number that they can be reasonably reached at. Section 2 is the hazards identification and classification, tells the ingredients and description of the hazards. Also has the pictogram, which I will cover later when we get to it. If it is a mixture, it will describe what the substance is a mixture of. In section 3, you have composition or information on the ingredients, impurities and stabilizing additives, cutoff, concentration limits, whatnot. Section 4 is first aid measures. First aid measures, including, instruction of first aid by routes of entry, recommendations for medical care, immediate medical care if needed, important symptoms and effects, whether they be acute or delayed. Screen froze again. I apologize. Waiting for the next slide to pop up on my end because it's not there yet. I'm sorry, I just it's frozen on my end. I'm showing sections 3 and 4, which is what I just covered. I need 5 and 6 to move forward, obviously. This is embarrassing. I apologize. Try something. Go from current slide again. Let me try this. Okay, next. Section 5 would be firefighting measures, appropriate extinguishing equipment, what is suitable, what is not, specific chemical hazards and recommendations for precautions. Section 6, accidental release measures. If there is an accidental release, you should notify a member of management. So there can be an emergency response team formulated to contain the spill, clean it up, decontaminate the area, and dispose of the substance according to law. There are also personal precautions and emergency procedures, emergency response procedures, ways and things needed for contaminant, and obviously, like I mentioned before, the cleanup and how it is disposed of. Section 7, handling and storage. Safe handling and storage practices, proper hygiene practices, ventilation requirements for rated storage cabinets. Section 8 will cover exposure controls and PPE. So section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8 are the most important to me. Not saying that the others are not important, but like I said, 1 through 5 and 8 are generally the most important because those are the most immediate that you would need to reference. Section 9, physical and chemical properties and appearance. What state the substance is, solid, liquid, or gas. Does it have an odor, flash point, or flammability? Section 10, stability and reactivity, covers test data, whether it is stable or not under normal ambient conditions, any stabilizers or safety issues, and possible hazardous reactions that could occur. Section 11 and 12, toxicological information, routes of entry, symptoms, description of short and long-term exposure effects, description of symptoms. Section 12, environmental or ecological data. This is non-mandatory, but generally SDSs have that because they could be hazardous to the environment if released. Section 13, disposal considerations, non-mandatory exposure considerations, secret precautions, appropriate disposal, whatever else it needs to cover. Section 14, transport and information, mostly for the DOT, guidance for classification info on shipping, UN proper shipping name, and everything else. Again, my screen is frozen. I apologize. This is not ideal for me today. This generally does not happen. Let me try this one more time. I apologize for all of this. Section 15, regulatory information, safety and health, environmental regulations not mentioned prior. Section 16, the last known revision, but section 16 will also cover anything that the first 15 sections did not cover. We'll cover how to use an SDS book real quick. I will show you a demonstration once I get through this slide. When you open an SDS book, at least our book at our company, we have two tabs. There's a products tab and an index tab. The products list is in alphabetical order. If you know what you want to find, run your finger down, find the substance. It'll tell you what its identification number is and what section it is in. If you don't know the ID number, but you know what it's classified as, you can find that classification section and flip through it to find it. So I will stop sharing the slideshow real quick. Show you this book. This is the book that we have at work. Again, when you open it up, there are two tabs. There's a products tab and an index tab. Open this. We have several pages of the list of products. For instance, I will use PB Blaster. I will run my finger down through the book until I find PB Blaster. It is on the second page. PB Blaster. It is right here. Once you find it, run your finger across. Its identification number is LU6 and it lies in section 8. We have tabs here, number the sections. You find section 8. Look into section 8 and you will find the proper one. We have a tab on it because we use it so much and we use it for a demonstration, but PB Blaster, right? Win today, PB Blaster, right there. It's SDS section 1, section 2, which contains the pictograms that I will go over. When we get back into the slideshow. If you did not know, the ID or name of the product, but you knew what category it fell under, you could go into the index section, find the category number, flip to that number, and then find what you're looking for. Put this away real quick. Go back to my PowerPoint, share that, and my view went away, so I'm going to do that again. Okay, following this, container labeling. Lovely. I will. There are proper and improper ways to label containers. Containers should come properly labeled with everything you need to know from the factory or distributor, manufacturer, distributor. However, if you transfer them into portable containers, that portable container must be labeled the exact same labeling as on the original container that the hazardous substance came from. So for instance, I won't take this out. Actually, it's probably better that I do. I will stop share. So simple green, for instance, on the back, well, this is proper labeling, tells you what it is. On the back, there's a lot of other stuff. There is an NFPA diamond down here showing all zeros. But if I were to, if this were hazardous, which it's not, and I transferred this to a portable container, that portable container should be labeled. Now, they give you this properly labeled, dilution measures, everything like that. So that's all fine and good. I can pour this in here with no problem. If we use something like this, plain, that's just a great value label. Bottle was unmarked. You could pour anything in here. You don't know what it is. You can't do that. You have to be able to identify what the substance is if you take it out of its original container. Share screen, go back. Sorry again. Okay. Any questions? I'm kind of going to breeze through these next, the remaining slides. I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time. GHS pictograms. I also have a sheet of those here, but they are on the screen. We hand these out to workers when we do the training. There are oxidizers, which is the flaming O. Flammables, which is a flame, explosives, which looks like a bomb going off. Poisons or toxins, which is the skull and crossbones, corrosives, test tubes, dumping on the hand. Gas under pressure is the cylinder. Two new ones to the international market, health and acute toxicity, which is the person with the star looking thing in the middle of him. Environmental or ecological, the tree and the fish, and irritants would be the exclamation mark. Two symbols that are not shown in the GHS but are internationally recognized. Obviously, you have the biohazard symbol and the radioactive symbol. So real quick to buzz through this, some examples of oxidizers: bromine, peroxides, chlorates, nitrates. They react readily with no energy output. They are a severe fire hazard. They are recognized by a ring on fire. these pictograms displayed will be on every SDS and what their hazards are. They also intensify combustion and they increase the flammability range. What are flammables? Flammables are substances with a flash point under 100 degrees Fahrenheit. They're hazardous because they produce ignitable vapors at normal ambient air temperatures. They use appropriately rated and approved storage cabinets when you store them, and do keep them away from ignition sources. What are explosives? Explosives produce a volume of gas that expands rapidly in a very short period of time. There are multiple kinds or types of explosives: mechanical, nuclear, and chemical. Chemical makes up the majority of explosives used in engineering. Mechanical explosives depend on the physical reaction, and nuclear is a self-sustained nuclear reaction. What is poison, or what are toxic substances? They can be used to harm an organism. They refer to the effects on the organism. This symbol is also known as acute toxicity, as I mentioned briefly just before that. The greater the amount of a substance you come into contact with or that enters your body, the greater the effect can have on your body, and your duration of exposure also plays a role in it. What are corrosives? Corrosives are substances that degrade things like metal or stone. They have a strong ability to break down human tissues. We would know them more so as acids and bases. That's pretty much it for corrosives. What is gas under pressure? Gas under pressure, when released, gas expands to occupy the space. Gas under pressures contain a large amount of stored energy. There are different types. You have compressed gas, liquefied gas, refrigerated, liquefied, and dissolved. They are all kept in enclosed containers, like propane tanks, for instance. What is a health hazard? Health hazard or acute toxicity, environmental effects that have impacts on short-term health, exposure through touch, ingestion, inhalation, or injection. Environmental or ecological hazards, air contaminants, toxic waste, chemicals. Environmental hazards, release of harmful toxic substances will not only affect you and other people, but will also affect animals, plants, and the ecosystem. Poison organisms to cause death, essentially. What are irritants? Irritants are substances or chemicals that can cause inflammation or skin diseases. For instance, contact dermatitis, is like eczema or psoriasis. They can cause, there are primary irritants and secondary irritants. Primary irritants, there's direct irritation to the exposed area, and secondary effects are shown after a period of exposure, not confined to one area. Examples: chemicals, solvents, degreasers, oils, acidic, alkaline materials. Questions there? Development of the GHS label. When the GHS label was developed, in the next slide, you will see a photo of it, but the labels are required to have product identifier, supplier information, signal words, which are words to describe the relative severity of the hazard. They're required to have a hazard statement. The hazard statement is assigned to the hazard class, describes the nature of the hazard, including the degree, which would be the numbers that we showed earlier. Even though those pictograms that I showed you did not have numbers on them, there are numbers associated with them. Like, for instance, flammable 3, gasoline is third degree hazard. The hazard pictograms, a symbol to depict the hazard or the danger. Precautionary statements describes the recommended measures to take to reduce the impact or the exposure, and other supplemental information. Here is an example of a GHS label that shows you do have, for example, this obviously is carbon monoxide. It shows the pictograms. It's flammable. It can be a compressed gas. It is a health hazard, and it is a poison or a toxin. Most commonly seen in exhaust from vehicles. Signal word: danger. used for severe instances, why warning is less severe. You have the product name or the identifier, it is carbon monoxide. You have the hazardous statement, you have precautionary statements here, and you have manufacturer information on the bottom with additional product identifiers. Questions? Again, I know this was brief. I kind of zipped through it a little bit. It is a condensed version of what the training would be. If I were giving this in a classroom setting, I would spend more time on giving examples and showing examples, but showed you how to use an SDS book, showed you how to, what a properly labeled container is, properly labeled portable container and not, went through the pictograms, went through the NFPA and the GHS briefly, spill containment or spill response briefly. I know that was brief, but I would cover that in more detail under normal circumstances. That's pretty much it. I have my references here. I want to thank everybody for watching. I apologize for my computer difficulties. Thank you for staying along and being understanding. Hope you all have a nice day and you all work safe. Thanks. Bye.